So hi there, welcome back to our Parenting Today lecture series. We are on week number 4, part 2. We're beginning a conversation in regard to emotional development. And remember that we are focused in this moment on the age range of 6 years to 12 years. Really important time in terms of emotional development. So this particular phase of childhood, there's a real strong position or focus on identity development. So that self-identity, this child really begins to develop a sense of self-esteem or self-concept. Gender identity as well as ethnic identity also really begin to form here. A child begins to form their identity primarily in relation to others, so that includes parents, family members, as well as peers at school or at other places. Pro-social development is essential here, as well as moral development and self-regulation, in particular a child's ability to be able to regulate emotion. In terms of the development of self-identity, toddlers tend to learn through exploration that they're separate from parents. Preschool children begin to see themselves in dichotomous terms. So a child is really, that in preschool age, is seeing themselves in terms of concrete ways, black and white. So in terms of bad or good, pretty or ugly. And I think what the most important takeaway here is that children are essentially like little recording devices or little sponges during this early childhood phase. And the voice of their parent or primary caregiver really becomes that voice in their head that's going to last them throughout their lifetime. So it's that we also have that running monologue inside of our heads that's always, giving us instructions or offering commentary on what's going on in the room or world around us. But it's not something that most people talk about a whole lot, unless, of course, you're in counseling or therapy. That's something that I've talked a lot with clients about over the years. And that running monologue really is deeply rooted in this toddlerhood as well as in the preschool age. So school-age children tend to view themselves in more general terms or characteristics rather than their behaviors. So kids that are school-age tend to have a more balanced view of abilities. They begin to have that ability to evaluate their own behavior instead of just, taking somebody else's evaluation of their behavior at face value as fact. In terms of promoting self-identity, the parent's role is really to allow children to make more choices as they grow in an age-appropriate way. Parents can best help this child develop a self-identity by being sensitive and responsive and modeling confidence as well as flexibility. Self-esteem is linked to two factors: feeling of competence where it matters, so that's physical appearance, social acceptance, and what else? That's something that I'd love to hear from you guys if you care to share that on the discussion board wall this week. The amount of social support also is a large factor in terms of a developing child's self-esteem. Children with high self-esteem like to explore, adapt more easily to frustration, and children with poor self-esteem often have mothers who seem or categorized as more cold and angry. Children with poor self-esteem are also more sensitive to negative feedback, and they generalize the negative feedback from mothers to others. In other words, if mom doesn't like me, then nobody likes me. Gender identity is something that really starts to form at this particular stage. And remembering that gender identity is defined as an individual's personal experience of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman. And gender identity is something that continues throughout life, throughout the developmental lifespan. And it's believed to be shaped by biology, culture, child-rearing practices, social norms, etc. So in terms of gender identity, at the age of 2, gender identification occurs. Between the ages of 3 to 5, gender tends to be stable across time. And between the ages of 5 to 7, gender is pretty consistent regardless of appearance. A gender schema is something that is defined as an organized set of thoughts and beliefs about what it means to be a boy or a girl or male or female. In terms of socializing gender roles, parents teach children about gender roles. They model gender behaviors directly. They stimulate gender stereotype behaviors in their actions with children, and these are often subtle. Mothers tend to be more responsive to irritable infant sons and talk more to daughters, and infant boys tossed in the air are more than infant girls. Toddler boys are also given more autonomy than girls. So it's these very subtle yet very profound ways and differences that parents treat their children really can have a deep effect in terms of a child's being socialized into a gender role. There's no major difference in behaviors until about 18 months, but how people react to boys versus girls is different. At the age of 2, boys tend to be more active, like building things. Girls tend to like more arts, crafts, and reading kind of activities, typically being read to at the age of 2. At the age of 3, same-gender peer groups typically begin to form at school, daycare, in the neighborhood, at home, at church, in different social situations. Boys tend to be more aggressive and active, and girls tend to be more helpful and sometimes fearful than boys. In terms of ethnic identity, it's defined as a psychological attachment to a group sharing a common ancestral heritage based on a nationality, language, and culture. And at age 3, children can recognize ethnic identity if it's based on an easily recognized characteristic, such as physical appearance or as particular style of dress. At age 5, children can recognize ethnic identity if it's based on less obvious characteristics, such as religion. And at age 7, children begin to realize that ethnicity is something that's stable. In terms of socializing ethnic identity, exposure to customs, rituals, dress, and cuisine reinforce that pride in ethnicity. And it also can be the source of shame if a child faces negative reaction from the peers or it receives any type of discrimination, oppression, racism from the environment. A positive identity is achieved through affirmation by parents, relatives, and friends. I'm going to move on and shift the focus of our discussion to the development of relationships. So key relationships in childhood include that of the parent to the other parent, a parent to a child, siblings, and relationships of that of peers. In a parent-parent relationship, it's the most important relationship for a child, according to some research, even more than a parent-child relationship. We do know that parental conflict creates anxiety in children. Gender roles are still evident. Mothers spend twice as much time in housework and childcare than fathers, keeping in mind that we're focusing on a traditional heterosexual marriage or relationship in this particular discussion. That's what most of the research is about. However, there is lots of new research emerging in terms of all kinds of diverse family styles. In terms of a parent-child relationship, the role of parents is to be an interactive partner with a child, to be an instructor for the child, and to provide activities and opportunities for growth. Remember, Galinsky termed this the authoritative period for parenting. Children begin to disobey and to test limits, and parents must really begin to teach rules and encourage self-regulation. Talk about the parent-child relationship and some of the goals, remembering that attachment is the goal. Attachment builds on the work of earlier years, building in security and trust in relationships, and motivating the child to learn family values and rules. Children are socialized into gender and ethnic identities, and sharing family stories helps build language and strengthen autobiographical memory. Parents can also really help stimulate growth through play with their children. Parent childhood is something that changes over time. So parents have half as much time with children in elementary school than preschoolers. They tend to show less affection. We do know that a secure attachment equals school success, or it can increase school success as well. Co-regulation is when control shifts from parent to child. So children begin to make decisions, again, at an age-appropriate level. Parents monitor, supervise, and approve. Conflicts tend to arise at this stage around rules, behavior, and personality. In terms of the father-child relationship here, we have a picture of the fathers. Father Knows Best in the 1950s, and then here's a modern-day father with his children. The role of father is something that's really evolved in the last century. Fathers play more, mothers perform childcare, schoolwork, and reading more still, according to recent data. Fathers are more involved with sons than daughters, and the greater involvement that fathers have in a child's life, the better cognition, better self-efficacy, greater success, and fewer behavior problems children have. Feeling unloved by the father can result in problems for the child regardless of the relationship with the mother. Again, really important takeaway from this slide. So I'll say it again, is that feeling unloved by the father tends to equal problems for the child regardless of that father's relationship with the mother. This right here is a graphic depiction of a sibling relationship here. It looks like one of the little boys here might be feeling a little jealous or envious, not feeling so happy or excited to share mom's time. In terms of sibling relationships, preschoolers often experience the birth of a sibling. So child effects is the change in parenting behavior depending on the birth order. So changes in family dynamic happen considerably here. Parents are more affectionate, attentive, and engaged with the firstborn only child. Older children lose parental attention and child-centered parenting when siblings are born. So parents tend to have less time after the birth of a second child or adoption of a second child. They become more directive and controlling, more parent-centered. Resources in terms of time, energy, and money tend to be stretched, which can lead to anxiety and conflict if it's not managed well, or even when it's managed well. Still continuing on talking about sibling relationships, mothers tend to be consistent in attention and responsiveness across children, but they may be more competent with younger children just because they have that experience. Parents model and promote positive relationships between siblings, so parents' relationship with each other is paramount. So parents naturally compare children in order to differentiate them. Parents respect the differences between children. Siblings also tend to mirror the parental relationship. So in secure homes, siblings spend quality time during the elementary school years, and older siblings tend to provide care for younger ones. In chaotic homes, sibling relationships may be conflicted. There may be some anxiety or depression there. And of course, there's sibling rivalry, which tends to increase if children sense differential treatment. And as children learn about cooperation, negotiation, and empathy, conflict tends to decrease. We know here that sibling relationships become the most important relationship in old age. So oftentimes, as time goes on, parents die. Parents may go on to become, their children may go on to become parents themselves, rather, and those parents eventually leave the nest. So hopefully that child will have a sibling relationship that will hopefully be lifelong. They have shared values and history, and it's also the longest relationship that people are likely to have. So in terms of addressing sibling rivalry, which can be a really tricky thing to manage, parents can enlist older children as helpers, can engage in what's called sociodramatic play. So use a doll to teach older children about what babies can and can't do. It can be fun, informative, really strengthen that parent-child bond. Parents can also model verbal strategies instead of hitting or biting. Teach children those mutual problem-solving skills through eye messages and active listening, and value each child as an individual without making comparisons and treating all children the same. So we're going to end our conversation here about sibling relationships. It's right here is a group of siblings. And we will begin our discussion on part number 3 in a few moments. So I look forward to seeing you soon.